A new year, a new Doctor. Let's rank the Regenerations. Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name's Kevin. I am a geek. You're watching Kevin the Geek. And for my first non-review Doctor Who episode of the year, I thought that I would like to try and do a ranking. And I thought, what's something I can do that also includes classic era, of which I will admit at this stage I'm not fully versed on. I've not watched everything there. I've watched a few episodes and a few clips and things, but I don't have a good overall sense of the entire show. However, what I can do is rank the Regenerations. And when I say I'm going to rank the Regenerations, I would like to be just quite specific here. I'm going to rank the Regeneration itself. So not the story in the lead up to it, not the actor portraying the part, simply the actual special effects of the Regeneration and the directing choice and the transition basically from one actor to another. The other thing I'm going to just add in as a little caveat, I am going to exclude non-leading regenerations. So I'm not going to include any regenerations by any other Time Lord, i.e. the Master. I'm not going to include things like the Meta Crisis Doctor. And I'm also not going to include any fake regenerations like you had with the 11th or the 12th Doctors. Anything like that. This is literally every individual leading actor going to the next one. However, that will, of course, by that definition, include the War Doctor, as he's a true incarnation. So, there are 14 to do at the time of recording, so let's get started. Number 14, the Second Doctor. Okay, so the first sort of 5 that you'll see on the ranking are all basically sort of tied in one way or another, in the fact that the actual regeneration effect, for the most part, takes place off screen, that you don't actually see the transition. And this is the only one where the transition not only happens where you don't see it from one actor to another, but it's actually separated by an episode. So when you see the effect for the Second Doctor, you see it at the end of one episode, and then the next episode, which of course is not for a little while later, you see the Third Doctor falling and stumbling out of his TARDIS. Now, the actual effects bit that you see with Patrick Troughton with the Second Doctor, it's obviously the way that they envisaged it at the time, it was like going on some sort of psychedelic trip. And I can kind of see that with the whole swirling nature, as Patrick Troughton kind of does. Yeah, put it bluntly, it didn't look good. And I'm prepared to give it the benefit of the doubt that it was, of course, in the 60s. However, it still was not a good look or a good effect. Number 13, the Fifth Doctor. So with this specific one, it kind of follows that similar pattern. You don't actually really see the effect of the transition. I thought at first when I was watching this, I was thinking maybe you can see a little bit of something. But it does another one of these sort of psychedelic trip type things, and basically the whole face of the Fifth Doctor gets covered with this sort of pink whirly light kind of thing, and then it kind of clears, and then there's the Sixth Doctor and he sits up. So the actual effect of it wasn't that great there. Number 12, the War Doctor. So this is the first regeneration. that on this list that takes place post the revival era, starting with the Ninth Doctor. And I feel a little bit bad putting it so far down this list because the actual effects do look good. And they've clearly refined them over time, particularly like the glowing golden energy coming out of the hands and everything like that. However, the big problem I have is largely due to circumstances a little bit outside of their control. The fact that Christopher Eccleston wouldn't come back to film and you know, do a short little bit there. And in a way, I almost wish that they'd never done it and they'd maybe held off and maybe they hope that he may eventually come back. They did the best that they could, but the whole kind of freeze frame of it and it cut away before you probably saw it. That last little moment for me personally, that's what just brings it down. Number 11. The 11th Doctor. Now, with this specific one, the Doctor technically had 2 regenerations. You had the bit that was on top of the bell tower when the basic regeneration energy kind of destroyed all the Dalek spaceships and everything. I'm not taking that into consideration here. I am only going to be talking about the moment of the actual regeneration itself. And because of that, it was such a snapshot. I get what they were doing from a narrative story, but that is not involved in this ranking at all. The whole narrative storyline and everything like that may have bumped it up a little bit higher otherwise. But as it was, the actual effects, it was very quick. It was literally almost instantaneous. One Doctor, the 11th Doctor basically leant back, face basically going off screen very briefly and then popping back up, and there was the 12th Doctor, Peter Capaldi. So the fact, again, it was it was basically the definition of blink and you miss it. Because of that, that's why it's quite low down on this list. Number 10, the 8th Doctor. So, with this particular one, it's a very similar one that the actual change happens off screen. And kind of similar to what they did with the War Doctor, because it is the War Doctor involved with both of those, they had to do the best of what they could with it. The actual regeneration effect looked good and, you know, probably a little bit higher. And maybe I think I liked the slower build-up aspect of it compared to a blink and you miss it moment with the previous one, which is why that's why the 8th Doctor just goes ahead on that count. Number 9, the 6th Doctor. Okay, so from here on out, we do actually start to see the effects and the changes and the change from one Doctor to another. Now, with the 6th Doctor, again, kind of let down the fact that a previous actor refused to come back. So they had to compromise a little bit. And it was, in actual fact, it was Sylvester McCoy donning a curly wig. They roll him over, and then you see this sort of swirling pattern on his face, and then it's a simple fade from one to another. And the fact that it just kind of took place on the face, again, it was limited because they were restricted due to the fact that Colin Baker refused to come back. Number 8, the 4th Doctor. Now, this is a regeneration effect that really looks out of place when you compare it to every single other one. More so than anything else. Because it's just so weird. You have this whole Watcher thing and you have this kind of white ghostly figure that comes forward and then kind of gets sucked into the Doctor's body. And then you see this sort of white humanoid shape around the Doctor. And then it just sort of fades into the Fifth Doctor, Peter Davison. It's a bit of a weird effect, I'm not going to lie. I think they just maybe wanted to try something a little bit different. Number 7. The Seventh Doctor. So this was the one from the TV movie, and probably the first one where they're starting to get really, kind of half-decent graphics, considering that this only came out a couple of years after Jurassic Park. But the biggest thing I note from this is how the change almost... The best way I can describe it is it looks like a dog who's chewing a toffee. The kind of weird kind of facial stretches and everything like that. Other than that, it looks reasonably good. Number 6. The 13th Doctor. Okay, so for this one, the biggest reason that I'm scoring this so low in comparison, weirdly considering the fact that it is the newest one, is the instance with the clothes. I don't like that. And I get where Russell T Davies was coming from. He put in an article on the lines of, I don't want this kind of change for the first one being from a woman to a man. I don't want it to make it like drag, basically. But yeah, the whole thing, the rest of it looks reasonably okay. That is just a bit weird. And maybe there will be some storyline element into it. But I wasn't a fan of that. Number 5. The 12th Doctor. Okay, so the reason I'm probably putting this where it is I like to see more of a transformation involving the entire face. And this one was more of just a general kind of fade, but it was like such a massive close-up on the eyes and the eyebrows. And I get what they were doing with that, because there was a whole thing about the 12th Doctor's attack eyebrows and things like that. And obviously that's how you actually saw the very first introduction of him, was through his eyes, from the episode of Day of the Doctor. But, yeah, I like to see more of the face. But not bad. Number 4. The 10th Doctor. So, this is where we start to get really, really close, and we're probably having to get quite nitpicky here. Because we're basically, of the final 4, there are 2 from the Revival era and 2 from the Classic era. And I'm going to have to start, because I like all 4 of these. I really do. I had to put into consideration the time in which they were created as well. That had to be a factor here. And I like this regeneration. I like the fact that it's a slower build-up, and of course they do that to really hammer home the emotion of the regeneration. But it gives you the time and allows you to see all these effects that's coming from the hands and around the face. It's a very good looking one. The only thing is, because of the newer style, I would say that it just obscured a little bit more the actual transformation of the face. But it looked good. Number 3. The 3rd Doctor. So here we have arguably the cleanest transitions Wasn't glamorous, wasn't spectacular. It was just one body and a simple fade into another. And I just loved that effect. For the time in which it was released, it's a damn good looking regeneration. Number 2, the First Doctor. Okay, so here, very difficult one, really hard to distinguish between this and the number 1 pick. And probably the reason that this is so high is because of when it was done. It was done in the 1960s. So they didn't have massive computers and things to be able to create all these special effects. It is a simple bright light that filled the majority of the screen, and then there was a simple fade from William Hartnell to Patrick Troughton. And for something that was recorded when it was, huge credit has to go to the filmmakers and all the effects team that did that. That's a remarkable achievement. But it doesn't quite take number 1 spot. Number 1, the Ninth Doctor. Okay, so if you did see my review of Bad Wolf and the Parting of the Ways, then you will have heard me say that as of right now, I consider this to be the best effect for a regeneration. It's the first one that introduced the whole regeneration energy and the lights coming out the hands, which has been a consistent theme coming out since the revival era. And admittedly, there have been slight changes here and there. For example, you start to see this a little bit more kind of lightning looking in some instances. Particularly you notice with Jodie Whittaker's regeneration into, well, David Tennant again. But for me, what makes this one so perfect is the fact that you get to see everything. And it's not just a simple fade from one thing to another. For example, he's got quite short hair, and you see the hair just growing at the side of his face. You see the nose changing shape. You see everything. That is a true regeneration effect. And that's the kind of thing that I just think they're not doing enough of. They need to do that real intricate details. I mean, I know it's probably a more ambitious effect to do. But I mean, freaking hell, you can create dinosaurs. You can create robots that are made out of liquid metal. You know, these are all stuff that's back and done in the early 90s. You know, surely you can do a simple change of hair and nose shape and chins and everything. So that's why the Ninth Doctor into the 10th Doctor is, in my opinion, the best regeneration. But those are just my thoughts. What are your thoughts? Drop a comment down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. And remember, I do lots of Doctor Who related content. Most of the time, at the moment, it is mostly reviews. But I'm going to be doing more things coming out this year. So do not miss out. I'm also got more things planned. Other TV shows to review. Other movies to review. Even some video games. But for now, my name is Kevin. I am a geek. And you have been watching Kevin the Geek. Goodbye.